Welcome back to L Formula. On today's F1 news, there is an update on Max Verstappen's contract clause, more Ferrari upgrades for the European races, Bernie Ecclestone had some spicy comments on Lewis Hamilton, and his prospects to be an 8-time world champion. All that and more. As always guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. So in previous videos we've discussed the F1 testing that will be done across 3 different dates. It'll be starting in Jan, and the first one will be at Catalonia in Spain, and the other 2 will be at Bahrain. The first test will actually be a private test. There will be no media on the track. So that means no cameras, no reporters, and this was also done in the beginning of the 2022 season when the new regulations came in. Given the technology of these engine and hybrid systems are so new, my assumption is that there are going to be failures, and they don't want it to be seen and publicized across the media. In all honesty, I think it's a good idea. We don't need to see all of the failures or potential failures. I think it's a good idea that it's kept private, at least for the first session, just to get them to iron out any issues, any problems that may arise in real life versus sort of simulation and factory settings. It's also just not good for team morale and also for the sponsors who have committed money and resource to them. Moving on, it is race week at Silvertsone, so it's going to be a complete change of weather given it's been absolutely hot over Europe and UK. There's been a heat wave over the last couple of days and weeks. However, this time round, we're going to see lower temperatures. On Saturday, it could be anywhere between 14 and 20, and on Sunday between 13 and 19. And there's also going to be a chance of rain. You can see that there is roughly around a 60% chance on rain on both qualifying and race day. I hope this will bring about a very exciting race as performance is completely neutralized, so the McLarens will not necessarily be the fastest car, and it'll be relying on driver skill and also strategy, changing from potentially the intermediates to slicks. This should also be good for Mercedes as their car tends to perform well in cooler conditions. So I hope this is going to be a good race. Audi is opening a new base at Bicester Motion. Sauber Motorsport, the firm that will run the new Audi F1 team from 2026, has opened a new base at Bicester Motion. The new technology centre in Oxfordshire will support the work of the team's headquarters in Switzerland, helping with the preparations for the 2026 season. The firm cites access to talent pool in the area known as Motorsport Valley, with nearby teams like Mercedes-AMG, Red Bull, Alpine as key reasons for opening up a new base. This is what Matteo Binotto had to say. The facility will allow us to tap into talent pool in Motorsport Valley and further strengthen our technical capabilities while being part of a thriving cluster at Bicester Motion, where you live and breathe motorsport. We've already seen Racing Bulls move an office closer to the Milton Keynes headquarters for Red Bull for the same reasons that they haven't been able to get staff to move to their headquarters in Italy. And now we're seeing the likes of Audi doing the same. Now the question is, and I guess it's a matter of when Ferrari does the same, as it'll improve their chances of winning a championship. Right now the team is heavily Italian, and it takes a lot of convincing to get staff to move all the way from the UK to Italy. And given a lot of personnel, especially senior management, have families and potentially even young families, it's a big ask to have them move from the UK to Italy just to work in Ferrari. Whereas there are many other alternatives by moving to a rival team like Mercedes, Red Bull, Alpine, Aston Martin. They're all in the UK. This is Max being Max. I thought it was quite interesting given the Formula One film has come out and people have asked him about his opinions on it, and he's just given a classic Max response. I don't like to be on the red carpet and dress up in a suit. I don't like to interact with people that I don't really know and have a fake smile and fake chat. It's horrible. I just don't enjoy it. I think Max would like to cancel all of the media as well in Formula One, because that's probably the worst part of his job as well. But I agree with him. I think a lot of the job and a lot of the mental strain is just having to talk to the media, interviews, doing content for sponsors, and the actual job of racing is very limited. You know, they only do around an hour and a half, 2 hours of racing. Obviously they have qualifying and free practice, but the fun part is racing. But the vast majority of Thursday and also after each session's free practice and quali, you have to do all these interviews and media stuff. I think it's quite draining, and I think it won't be a surprise the day he decides to retire, because I think all of this stuff just bears a toll on him. And as Autosport mentioned, Max is speaking for all the introverts out, which is absolutely true. Speaking of Max, Toto had some comments about whether Max would join Mercedes. I thought it was very interesting. This was on Sky Sports. Have a listen.
How likely is it that Max Verstappen will be a Mercedes driver at some point soon?
I think when you look at the situation we have with Kimi and George, we have a perfect lineup that we very much enjoy, that we believe is the future. But at the same time, and there's a 4-time world champion that needs to decide what he's going to do in the future, and that is just as a team principal, you need to see where that is going. But I think I give it a very little probability that this is going to happen.
Whatever, or just for next year?
I don't know what's going to be in 3 or 5 years. That's why you need to look at what is it that should be considered on the long term.
So you said it was a low probability, but I think he's downplaying it because it's very disrespectful for George, who is currently out of contract, and he's probably negotiating with him. It's very disrespectful for George if he says, oh, there's a high chance. So I think there is a chance. I don't think it's a small probability. There is a lot of chatter coming through various reporters, so there must be something there. There isn't smoke without any fire, and I think we'll know definitely by summertime whether Max's contract clause. I think Toto is probably very disheartened that he wasn't able to sign Max when he had Hamilton and Rosberg. He doesn't want to lose out on another opportunity because Max has made it very clear he doesn't want to be racing all his life. So he probably has a very limited time frame where he's going to be racing in Formula One before he goes off and does other things in other categories. So he needs to strike while the iron is hot. Or maybe Jos has even said that and said, look, hey, Max may not race till 2030 or whenever, 2028. So if you want to get him in your seat, you have to do this soon. So which brings us to Max Verstappen's exit clause. This is from AMUS, usually a very reputable source, so whatever they say tends to be correct. There is a small window to leave the team. To do this, Verstappen must be placed worse than third in the driver's standings by the end of July. At the moment, this is not the case, but Russell is only 9 points behind. Isn't it so interesting that Russell could dethrone Verstappen, and in that could trigger his contract exit clause, which then would leave Russell without a seat. So it probably is in Russell's incentive to stay fourth, at least until the summer. And to be fair, when Kimi collided with Verstappen, he didn't look really that upset. Yeah, on the radio he swore and said some stuff, but he didn't come across like he was super upset. I think he already knew the championship was probably done. He's out. He's not going to be competing this year. And this probably gave him a sense of relief. Okay, I don't need to fake a bad result. It has already happened. I've got a DNF. I'm out. And that will potentially help get him below third place in the championship, which will then give him the optionality, which is useful for him. Speaking of Red Bull, this was a very interesting stat. Sauber has scored more points than Red Bull in the last 3 races. And what that means is Max Verstappen is not performing in the Red Bull. The second seat is just not picking up anything. So you can see here in the last 3 races, Spain he scored 1, Canada 18, and then 0 in Austria. Tsunoda 0-0-0, and then Red Bull's 1 18-0. And whereas Haas, both the drivers have contributed, mainly Nico Hülkenberg with 10, 4, and 2, and Bortoleto scoring 4 in this race, which leads them to 10, 4, 6, which is 20 compared to 19. But there is a fundamental issue with Red Bull here. They need to change the car concept because the second driver is clearly not gelling with it. Max Verstappen is such a genius of a driver that he's able to outperform a car that no one can drive. And this will be a massive problem if they don't get the direction right in 2026, regardless of whether Max is here or not. Christian Horner from Red Bull made some interesting comments on McLaren. He said, what is impressive is the way that they're able to keep up with each other without the tires going out. Oscar pretty much made love to the exhaust of Lando's car and his tires stayed protected. Now, I'm not sure if it's got to do with the aero or the brakes. There is something in that car that doesn't cause the tires to overheat, but it's true. Oscar was behind Lando throughout that whole race and it didn't seem like there was any wear. Frankly, really impressive, and it also will give a great second half of the season where they will be fighting to the wire and they'll be able to race lap after lap without any degradation. So potentially this could be a really good thing for us fans. I don't know if it's got to do with this front wing and the way that they've developed it. It was demonstrated in FP1 and FP2, but it seems like it potentially has something to do with the brakes, which is what Christian Horner has been banging his head against the wall with the FIA to try and get them. There was this interesting moment in the lead up to the race where Lewis Hamilton took a photo of George Russell.
That's a good picture. I want to say, how about present? You should do that.
And if you were wondering what it looked like, it was basically this shot, which was actually a pretty decent shot. You got Alex and George, and it was pretty well done, to be honest. And Formula One had an article that talked about these upgrades. Ferrari had introduced a new part of its 2025 wind tunnel program with an all-new floor. And this upgrade was one of the reasons why Leclerc was able to get third and also Hamilton getting fourth. A new rear suspension is also expected to be introduced either at Silvertsone this upcoming weekend or the following race in Spa. In combination, it is hoped that this could finally unlock the potential of the SF25's design. But it's important to note that the team's wind tunnel is now fully devoted full-time to the 2026 car. So whatever these upgrades are coming through in this final European leg, we are potentially going to be seeing the end of upgrades, which will last them till the end of the season. So after the new suspension at Spa, Ferrari will bring a floor update to Hungary. The suspension, similar in concept to the one Mercedes introduced at Imola, aims to improve traction out of low corners and reduce tyre wear. However, it's expected to raise the rear more under braking, potentially compromising stability. While Leclerc may prefer this trait, it could be more challenging for Hamilton. That is why a second floor update is expected at the Hungarian Grand Prix to increase downforce to offset this negative effect. I think if this upgrade works, they potentially could take second place in the championship. The only concern I have is Hamilton. I don't think he's settled in properly. He still doesn't understand how he needs to adapt his driving style. It sounds like the car is generally built around Leclerc, and Hamilton is struggling more because he has to adapt his driving style to it. But hopefully with the second update that is expected to be in the Hungarian Grand Prix to increase downforce and offset the negative effects, the car under braking, and hopefully this will help Hamilton get to grips with the car. Speaking of the car, in Austria they were told to lift and coast, and this was actually to protect the brakes and not the plank. So they had asked them to lift and coast early in the race when the cars were heavy and the brakes were most under stress. So Ferrari's brake issues may be more serious than they appear. If that is the case, if they can get their brakes sorted, I think they could potentially be challenging McLaren, because if you think about it, over a whole race, apart from, the safety car in the first 3 laps, they were only 19 seconds, around 20 seconds behind McLaren. So if they are able to get over that braking issue and they're not lifting and coasting, I don't think it'll be 19. I think it obviously won't be super close, but it'll get them close enough that if there is a mistake or if there is an issue or there is a safety car, they're able to capitalize on it and they're able to take the first 2 places. So I think whatever's coming out of these upgrades, and if they can get their heads around the braking problem, I think there is a good chance of them stealing some podiums from McLaren. And it could also mean definitely that they are taking home second place in the championship. So Bernie Ecclestone had some interesting comments about Lewis Hamilton, and this was on Sky Sports TV. He was asked about Lewis Hamilton, whether he can add another championship to his world titles. And he bluntly said no. He said, I think there was a period in people's lives when everything is going to work well or not work well. I think he was fortunate enough to be around when, firstly, there wasn't so much competition. So it is a little bit easier. And now he's got competitors, which when he's winning everything, he didn't have too many people at the top of the tree. But I hope he can still get the job done. Whether he can win a championship where he is, it is a completely different story. I think what Bernie means by that is this is before the cost cap. So there was no competition in constructors. It was mainly Mercedes and Red Bull and maybe Ferrari. So there's only 3 constructors that were realistically had the budget to compete for a championship. Then Lewis had Valtteri Bottas as a teammate for quite a few years. So he had no competition from his teammate, whereas Rosberg did push him to the limits, I would say. And that's why Rosberg was able to get 1 championship from the 3 whilst they were together. But also now you're starting to see a different set of drivers that are in Formula One, because you don't need to necessarily get paid drivers just to keep the factory running. So because of the budget cap, you're able to choose the best drivers. It's best demonstrated to look at how it was in 2014, for example. So you could probably say that there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 top drivers. Nico Hülkenberg was decent, but I wouldn't consider him championship material. And then maybe Raikkonen was way past his prime. And that's about it, really. And if you look at this, it's the same thing each year. There's probably like 7 or 8 really good drivers, and the rest are pretty average for Formula One. Whereas if you look at this time around, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, George Russell, Leclerc, including Hamilton, Antonelli, Alonso, Sainz. So that's about 9 there. And then you can argue that there are a lot of young talents that have come through that are potentially going to be better than the previous drivers that I'd mentioned in the 2014 to 2019 seasons. So I think there is some truth to it. The question is whether Hamilton is able to do it at Ferrari. That's one question. And the other is whether he can go toe to toe with some of these drivers, particularly Max Verstappen. If you can't get past Max, then then there's no need to even talk about the rest of the drivers. So Yuki has entered the chat for the Cadillac seat. So it looks like they are exploring whether he is a potential candidate for their 2026 seat. And I think it makes sense. Where does Yuki go? He has not performed or delivered at Red Bull. So there's no need for him to move down back to the junior team. That doesn't make any sense. I think it's best to get out of Red Bull and make your name somewhere else. The likes of Gasly and Albon did the same at Alpine and Williams. And I think it would make sense for him to do that, regain his confidence, put in some really great races and just try again. I don't think that car is really suited for anyone other than Max. But that just shows how great Max is as a driver, how he's able to outperform such a poor piece of machinery and still deliver, championship types of drives in a car that's extremely difficult. Or maybe that's just how he prefers it. So yeah, I think Yuki will potentially leave at the end of the season. And still talking about sort of silly season, Alpine are in early discussions with Mercedes about bringing reserve driver Valtteri Bottas to Eccelstone. Alpine are bottom of the championship and are reported to be assessing their driver lineup. And I'm not surprised. I think both Cadillac and Alpine, so there's 3 seats there, they're going to be looking at 3 names. It'll be Bottas, Perez, and Yuki Tsunoda. I think those ones are potentially going to be the best suited for those seats. And I think if you look at who else is in the picture, Joe, Drogovic, and Schumacher, I just don't think Joe did enough during the 2 seasons in Formula 1 to warrant another seat. I think Drogovic could be a wild card given how good performance he had in, say, like F2. Schumacher, again, same as Joe, he had his time in Formula 1. He was in that Haas team. He spun a lot. He damaged the car. Don't think there was enough there to warrant another go in another seat. Right, that's all for today, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.